The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, I'm Carl Seidel, host of The People's View. The show is sponsored by the Nashua City Republican Committee, and if you like to attend our meetings, they're the second Thursday of every month at 6:30 at the Crown Plaza. And if you want to find out more about our organization, you can go to nashuagop.org to see our website and learn about the events that we have.
Welcome to The People's View.
Hello, and help me welcome Lynne Ober, Chair of the Group 1 on Finance and Vice Chair of the overall Finance.
It's nice to be here, Carl.
Thank you. And Carol McGuire, who is Chair of the Administration
Executive Departments and Administration.
Committee.
Yes, that's the most important committee. Nobody understands what we do.
Okay, well. Then
with the longest name.
Definitely the longest name.
No, yeah, I don't have any initials or something that you know by, like Dread. Sorry to bring up that example. But we're going to talk a little bit about the budget and what's happening. We got only a couple more weeks in session, and we still don't have a good idea what the budget's going to look like when it gets presented to us. Can any of you make any comments about what's happening? I mean, we're going to have a session now. We find out that the Health and Human Services has run out of money, and they're going to need a little bit of injection next week. Again. And maybe we can talk a little bit about that too, as well as the rest of the budget that's over in the Senate right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Health and Human Services isn't a surprise.
Yeah.
They've been running $65 million in the red for several months. They were fully funded in the last biennium's budget, so I'm really not sure what happened, but they had a change of commissioner. When a new person comes in, things are a little different. I mean, that new person has to get up to speed. So I'm not sure whether the outgoing commissioner underfunded some things because the new commissioner isn't really able to put his finger on it. I will tell you that the Senate has said they are taking the House Finance amendments to the budget and to the trailer bill, which increases the laws. And they're using that as their basis. And I've been over there 4 different times to testify and worked with them some on where they're going. So they've been working very diligently. They're going to start to make their amendments on Monday. They haven't made any official cuts yet, but they've gone through everything in detail.
I haven't heard that their income estimates are very different from the House's either. No. So the budgets will probably look pretty much similar with a little bit of a different slant because the Senate always does things just a little bit differently.
Okay, well, one of the questions was whether we were increasing it. We had a good year. We had more income than we had anticipated, and now it looks like we've spent it all.
We always spend it all.
Well, I realize that, but I think that was the
budget is balanced. So everything that comes in gets either, after a small amount in the rainy day fund, everything else gets spent. That's how you balance your budget.
I don't know whether one of the things was they wanted more in the rainy day fund or what, but
I think it was due to battling spreadsheets. I was at a couple of meetings where people were debating over how much inflation do we actually have,
right? And
also what's our baseline. If you look at it with one set of numbers, it's okay, fine. Overall, from 2 years ago, it's up 5%, which is probably about right.
About right.
And but then if you look at one slice of it, wow, that went up a whole lot. And unfortunately, what it did is that it backfilled a whole lot of other places. The general fund is the most flexible pot of money we've got. And so when there's problems with Fish and Game or police standards and training or Department of Transportation, we use the general fund to get more done that if things were right, they'd have enough in their dedicated funds.
The reality is you cannot compare one budget year to another budget year exactly because the legislature passes laws. In the current budget we're in, which is fiscal year 16 and fiscal year 17, our fiscal year runs through June 30th. Fiscal year 18 starts on July 1st. In the current year, police training standards get 0 general funds. However, the legislature, in their wisdom, passed a law last year that said they are now going to be 100% generally funded. Why is that? Because their source of funding that was running them was going down. In addition, people who look at the bottom line and the overall increase and don't take the time to read the individual budgets, and I know it is a lot of detail because House Finance works on it. We worked on it from February 15th through March 26th, 5 days a week. So we put a lot of hours in, and most reps don't have the time to do that. But the highway fund, which is funded by the gas tax, doesn't have enough money to put salt on the roads, doesn't have enough money to do bridge maintenance and road repair. And part of that, I have to tell you, I contribute, and probably Carol contributes. I deliberately bought a car that got better gas mileage than my old car to cut down my transportation costs. And you get that per gallon that you buy, and then we have all the hybrids and the electric cars, plus the cost of asphalt has gone up. We had a bad winter, and by the time they put salt out, the highway fund was in the red. So this budget, for the first time, had millions from general fund spending. But you look at the budget from 2 years ago, it had $0 from general fund. So you look at that and you say, oh, the general fund spending has gone up significantly, but they're looking at the bottom line, not at what are you getting individually, and should we be funding bridge repair? Well, frankly, I think we should, because I don't want to fall through a bridge, but I don't know how Carol feels about that.
Bridge repair is way up there on my list of government priorities.
I think that's part of the problem is the finance department really did a good job on it, and they did spend all that time. But then we had 3 days to consider it as the legislature as a whole. And you can't really compare, spend the time to say, hey, we got to fix this or we got to fix that.
I disagree with that, Carl.
Yeah.
We had every hearing posted. Every hearing was public. We had amendments to put out. Finance held 3 lengthy public hearings in the evening that if reps had business during the day, they could have come in the evening and listened. We were in Derry from 4 o'clock until almost 9 one night. Yeah. We were in Concord Reps Hall, open to the public and to the reps from 3 one afternoon until almost 10 o'clock. We had 3 reps attend that particular public hearing. So there are a lot of people who just don't come.
Yeah,
the thing of it is that I've been to a couple of those, not this year, but in previous years, you get all the people coming in saying, my program needs more, my whatever needs more. You don't get anybody saying, we want to keep taxes down. It's the basic economic problem that you've got concentrated benefits and concentrated benefits and general pain. And so it's not worth any one person's time to get up there and say, after waiting through 50 people say my program needs more, to say we should spend less.
Yeah, even in the Monday review that they had before we voted on it, there probably was, 20% of the delegates there?
20% of the House reps came on that Monday. Yeah. We passed out detailed information. But Carol's right. The budget mantra, and I've done this for 6 terms, is always give me more money, cut her program, cut your program.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's what you hear at the public hearings. And so you have to, and I really do think that the budget that came out was a good job because it doesn't spend any extra money, it meets the top priorities. But the trouble is, like I said, that you've got people that are slicing and dicing it different ways and they don't like their particular slice.
And you don't have time to really go through anything with people like that are focused in little areas. You think, how's it going to work when the Senate comes over to the House now with their budget bill?
It's going to be very interesting. we're going to end up with a situation where none of the Democrats will vote for it. Well, maybe 2 or 3, I would think. And, well, unless it's a humongous big increase, most of the Democrats are not going to vote for it, at least not in my opinion. Probably the Speaker and half the Republicans will vote for it no matter what it is. And the question is, what does the other half do?
You've got more money in the budget for addiction services, more money in the budget for mental health. You've got at least one left the House, and I'm pretty sure it's going to come back this way from Senate, more money for road maintenance. I mean, we just can't be without salt in the winter. We can't be without repairing the roads. Carol and I are united on that, but I don't like driving on snowy roads.
I lost 2 tires this
The Senate has filed a couple of bills to move some of the things out into the huge surplus we have for 17. So I have a bill right now in finance that takes the money we had for fiscal year 18 and fiscal year 19, that is money that is mandated in state law to be paid to towns. It moves it out of the budget and it pays it out of fiscal year 17 surplus. So they'll encumber those charges and they'll run them from the surplus instead of having the surplus go just to the rainy day fund. And that will show a significant reduction in the budget. But you don't know if you're going to get a surplus. If we'd known we were going to have a surplus, we could have put this in the budget 2 years ago and sent it out, and we would be set to go and we could just encumber it. But you don't know that.
Well, that sounds
That's
like a good
very
idea.
Oh, yeah. The budget from the last biennium did put a fair amount in the rainy day fund, so we're not hurting, and therefore anything we've got should be spent on these special priorities and one-time jobs. I mean, one-time tasks.
Well, do you think our rainy day fund should be larger?
No.
No.
There's a problem with increasing the size of the rainy day fund. And that relates to our bonding rate. And if Nashua builds something, they use our bonding rate. They get their interest from the bond bank. So you have to be very careful. But we've got $100 million in the rainy day fund. It caps out at $150 million. If we raise that to $200 million and then we still only had $100 million, now we're only half filled, the bond rating could go down. So the treasurer actually comes and warns you about making too many changes to the rainy day fund in order not to negatively impact the towns.
Okay. I said I didn't know that's how it worked there, because
This is
I
like
thought
credit cards. You're better off to have, instead of having $1,000 on a card with a $1,000 limit, you're better off to have $1,000 on a card with $5,000 limit because you haven't used everything.
Right.
Okay. Well, let's hope that goes through smoothly, because I think that a lot of those areas that money's going to is very much needed. Some of it's a little historical, too.
Well, I think it is, but I also had a couple of bills that I worked carefully with Carol's committee on ED&A this year. One of them was to reorganize a couple of areas in the Secretary of State's office. We actually ended up cutting 2 positions and allowing them to hire people with better skills, and it was budget neutral. Actually, we're going to save like $4,000 or something.
A pittance, a rounding error.
But Carol's committee looked at that carefully, and it was a good bill. It's passed. It's on its way to the governor. We got some of the DAS legislation that had been left from 82.
Quite a bit of cleanup.
Cleaned up that is, 1, more effective, and 2, clearly says how government should manage, and again, no cost. So there was a lot of good things that went on. The thing I missed the most in the budget was that the House had put in a lot of aid to towns. And I know here in Nashua, Mayor Donchis talks about wanting more aid. And I couldn't believe why 100% of the Nashua reps did not vote for the budget, knowing that Mayor Donchis was pleading with the state to give him more aid. But that was in the budget.
He came up and spoke to my committee for, God, must have been half an hour, on the state sending more money to cover retiree contributions to retirement funds. And
Well, they had three reps of Nashua and with three different bills of how to handle that as far as what was needed to cover the
Yes. Well,
benefit.
we only passed one, and finance retained it.
I have it.
Yeah.
We passed it narrowly because a lot of us didn't feel that one town should be cross-subsidizing another town, which is what you do when you send more like that. Because it's the town, or in this case, city's decision on how many people to employ, how much to pay them, and what kind of conditions they have, like how much sick leave they can accumulate, how much free time they get. And if you've got a cheap town like I happen to live in, you have very few employees, and not many of them get outrageous bonuses. But not every town is like that.
That's been the problem in the 8 years I've been up there. Why haven't we been able to find a solution to that?
Well, and I've got this bill. The bill that ED&A passed that came out of Carol's committee, she just talked about, has a price tag of $82 million. And again, I've been on finance for 6 terms. When we stopped paying the 35% of the town's retirement costs, we had $13 million. And it's gone up nearly $70 million since then to pay 15% instead of 35%. How did that go up? Towns vote to hire new people. Towns vote to give raises. And then, quite honestly, cities and towns do not have good overtime policies. So people who can get overtime have been working a lot of overtime in the last 3 years before their retirement, and that boosts their retirement cost. And as a result, the costs keep going up and up and up.
The other thing is that the rate that you pay on these salaries has been going up. This past year, we got hit by simultaneously the retirement system decreased its expected rate of return because
of the economy.
Because they didn't think they were going to make that much. They also projected a decrease in the number of teachers because the number of students is going down. They figure it won't be going up very fast. And thirdly, they got a new mortality study which said that people are living longer and retirees are healthier, and we have to pay them while they're...
and we have to pay them longer.
And while that's a good thing in principle, and for each of I'm glad for everybody who does, it's a pain for those of us who have to pay for it.
Is there any hope of separating the two retirement systems like they were before you joined them?
I wouldn't bet on it.
You could separate them now. And in everybody's town report or city report, according to the new GASB accounting regulations, it shows what that town or that city's deficit is. Hudson alone, I live in Hudson, we're 23,000 people. Oh, something like $9 million that the taxpayers would have to fork over in order to separate. So yeah, you could, but the taxpayers would have a humongous hit. And let's face it, and this sounds horrible, but after 9/11, when the stock market crashed, it never came back. It had a big impact on pensions and retirements. And then you add the longer lifespan that Carol was talking about. And again, we're looking at the economy perhaps going down. I mean, that's what the economists think.
Well, you know, I had one interaction with the mayor of Nashua because of one of the departments, Public Works in Nashua, has their own retirement system. Which has been handled very well, apparently.
That's nice for them.
They managed, and I said, well, how come the rest of the city hasn't done that? You know, I didn't get any justifiable answer. That's what I was thinking. I thought, well, hey, it's going to be one hurt, but you're going to control your own destiny. You don't have to worry about the state cutting
And Manchester has a retirement system as well, but I'm not sure if new employees go into it or not, but they have a separate Manchester retirement system for at least some of their employees.
So they don't get hurt by this thing?
Well, they do, because a lot of their other people are in the system.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's a legacy system.
Yeah.
And so I think
They must have their oldest people in it.
Probably, yeah.
Oh.
So.
Okay. Well, we were talking about one of the other areas of the budget was where Health and Human Services is having a little bit of a problem that we're going to vote on. Is that something that we can hope will be corrected in the future?
I think part of this vote coming up relates to the mental health lawsuit that we lost. If you recall back when Speaker O'Brien was Speaker, we cut significantly the aid to the hospitals. The hospitals sued. They won a big amount. But we also cut aid in some of the mental health services and in Health and Human Services. We lost a lawsuit. We have to meet certain benchmarks. They've been working on a plan. I don't know if any of that's gone through ED&A or not.
Not that it goes for HHS.
But we're looking at adding beds at the hospital again. Now, we added beds in 15, and that staffing was in 16. And so when Governor Hassan vetoed the budget, she delayed opening those beds significantly because they couldn't hire. They didn't have the money. The money was in the budget. And all the people they'd interviewed then found other jobs. So they had to start from scratch when we finally passed the budget. But they're again looking at adding some beds. So part of that $20 million is this ongoing issue with the mental health lawsuit. We were given a number of years, a great number of years actually, to get everything up to snuff because you can't just build overnight.
And of course the problem is that most of the mental health services are provided in the community, and we have almost no way to know exactly what they're doing and how effective it is.
That's right.
We don't know which of their techniques are more effective, except in things like, no, this person has never, we have fewer people going to New Hampshire Hospital. That's about the only criteria.
The HHS doesn't have a mechanism communicating with these people?
They communicate, but they don't have any metrics.
Oh.
A lot of that they run. A lot of that are run by private groups. I mean, New Futures is involved with a lot of that. So it's not actually run by state agencies. You don't have a lot of control over a private group, even when you provide them funding to do what they're doing in the communities. I mean, you've got Manchester Mental Health has got quite an open clinic now that serves Manchester, and the goal is to keep some of these people in their homes. They have a job, let them work, and work with them on their issues as opposed to putting them in a lockup wing at New Hampshire Hospital.
Well, I think
in county jail.
Or county jail.
Yeah.
And the trouble is that they report, okay, yes, we saw this many clients, we spent this much money, and they don't say how it ended. How many of those clients were repeats.
It could have been this way, it could have been that way.
We don't know.
If you have a form and say, hey, this is the information we need back from you, so we can plan how to handle it. Because this year, my understanding was that we did look a lot on this home health care, making sure that there was money for those people because they hadn't had a raise in 6 years or whatever it was.
Hadn't had a raise since 2006. We gave them a huge increase, plus we paid the healthcare organizations to give them a retroactive raise. Again, we had no control over whether that retroactive raise was given, but the raise going forward they got.
Right.
And we opened the drug courts.
Yeah.
Now, Nashville's had a drug court funded by a federal grant. Now, Hillsborough North has got a drug court. We've opened more drug courts across the state, and they've discovered with that addiction our needs for mental health aid. And so you've got addiction, but we've also got more mental health aids that we're giving people.
And you need a longer-term health care. I mean, for some of these addicts that are off it, they need the, I don't know.
Continuing support.
So, yeah, I guess
recovery.
That's the best
They're
word.
in recovery. Yeah, and an awful lot of the mentally ill are addicted and vice versa. I mean, but I understand that most people who are actually addicted, they have mental issues, and so they take a drug that makes them feel better. And it goes downhill from there. So I heard that the Merrimack County Jail is the largest mental health facility in the state.
Oh, really? That's where they put them.
Well, no.
Are they looking for more beds or something?
More beds.
More beds in the hospital. But
yes.
A lot of the people in the jail don't necessarily need to be in the hospital.
Right.
They need to have, So you need to have some help.
Yeah, but some
staying
of them
home.
do, and
Some of them
you're gonna
do,
need
yeah.
some of that.
Well, and to make it worse, and I think this has got to be the worst thing going on, in the county jails, it's no contact visitation. In the state prisons, it's been contact visitation. And Commissioner Wren has got pictures of babies when they open the diaper. Here are drugs being smuggled into the guy in the jail. And I'm like, how can you use your baby to bring drugs to somebody in the jail? To the point that the commissioner now has said, we will have no contact. Although the rooms are open, there's no contact. I would carry drugs in my mouth, for example, and I would kiss you, and I would pass the drugs to you. You'd take it back to your cell. The drugs in the state prison are horrible. We've had a lot of trouble nailing them down.
Have you ever been to the Glencliff facility up there? That's our department, our committee was up there for a day, and they're looking at possibly expanding that. Is that something that worked in the
Glencliff, isn't that for the developmentally disabled and
they have a couple different
Alzheimer's
sections,
patients?
I guess you might say. It's mostly the county hospital it operates as, but they have 180 patients up there, 180 beds.
They're run very efficiently.
Yes.
Dan was always impressed by how tightly they ran.
Yeah.
We've been renting the space to the women's prison to the state. The new women's prison is under construction. Construction should end sometimes late fall, early winter. We'll be moving out, although the state took a 1 more year lease with the county. I had said to somebody in the county, once we are sure the state's going to leave, we don't want to push the women out, we need to think about rehabbing that building and turning it into a mental health facility or an addiction facility. I mean, we have a lot of space for a lot of beds
a good idea too.
that we could do something with. And so I think that's not near future because the state did file another 12-month lease, but it's
something you
short-term
plan now.
future.
It takes so long to get those things through. It's 2 or 3 years in planning before you.
And you have to have money for construction.
Right, right.
Well, that's not a bad idea, because we do need more ways to take care of the people.
Well,
It's probably the same amount of people that it always has been. They're just a lot more obvious than it used to be. And we don't have a village idiot anymore.
well, let's hope we can straighten out this in the next couple of weeks here and get ready for next year. I don't know what kind of bills you have in your mind, but
If I could just get through the budget, I'd be happy.
And then you have 2 months before you start them all over again on the next one. Well, thank you very much for your input, and hopefully we'll get you back here next year sometime, and we can talk about before we get started in 2018.
Thank you for having us.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
Much.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.